Good morning. Thank you very much, Dean, for those kind words. I'm delighted, very happy, and very pleased to be here this morning at Emory University Law School. It is good to see so many of you, judges, lawyers, members of the bar, members of the bench. During the past few years here in America, under the rule of law, we have witnessed what I like to call a nonviolent revolution. A revolution of values, a revolution of ideas. But it just didn't happen. Brave and courageous men and women who used the law to bring about unbelievable changes. To be in the presence of Judge Nixon, Judge Clemens, and John Doe. It is amazing to me. I feel unworthy to stand here. And I said to the young students here studying law that you're in the presence of history. I first met John Doe. I understand, John, that you spoke on last evening, and I don't want to get too emotional about it, but I first met John Doe almost 50 years ago during the Freedom Rides in May of 1961 in Montgomery. If it hadn't been for this man, this unbelievable lawyer, brave, courageous, standing up, speaking out, just doing his job, some of us would not be here today. We probably would not be alive. John Doe risked his life to save many of us, but to bring about justice. Just think, almost 50 years ago, during the sit-ins, during the Freedom Rides, it was impossible for blacks and whites to board a Greyhound bus and travel from Washington, D.C. through Virginia, through North Carolina, South Carolina, through Georgia, Alabama, through Mississippi without the possibility of being arrested. And we were arrested. Jail, we were jailed. Beaten, and we were beaten. Left lying bloody. A bus was burned outside of Anniston, Alabama, between here and Birmingham. An anger mob met us in Montgomery. We were beaten and left bloody, and some of us unconscious. But it was John Doe and others sought justice in the Federal District Court in Montgomery with Judge Frank M. Johnson. Just think, a few short years ago, in 1961, the same year that Barack Obama was born, we still had signs saying white waiting, colored waiting, white men, colored men, white women, colored women. Because of the work of the lawyers in and out of the Department of Justice, because of the ruling of judges, because of the action of Congress, those signs came tumbling down, and they are gone. And the only place our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren will see those signs today would be in a book, in a museum, on a video. So when people tell me nothing has changed, I feel like saying, come and walk in my shoes. I will show you change. We live in a different country. We live in a better country. And we are better people. But we still have a great distance to go before we make justice available for all of our citizens. We live in a country where it doesn't matter whether you're poor, middle class, rich, whether you're black or white, Latino, Asian American, or Native American. It doesn't matter. We're one people, we're one family, and we're one house. We all live in the same house, the American house. And there must be justice for all of the people that live in this house. Black and white, Latino, Asian American, Native American. We're one family, the American family. And there must be justice for all. And all of the citizens and all of the people that live in this country must have access to justice. There are forces in our country today that want to take us back and maybe slow down that movement, that drive towards simple justice for all. And we must not allow that to happen. I think some people during another period saw the media and other forces in our society as sympathetic referees in the struggle for justice. And today we may ask the question, where are those who are supposed to be on the side of justice and right, and who will stand up for what is fair? Now, most of you know that I grew up in the heart of the Deep South. I grew up in rural Alabama, about 50 miles from Montgomery, outside of a little place called Troy. And when I was growing up, I saw those signs. And I would ask my mother, my father, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, why segregation? Why racial discrimination? And they would say, that's the way it is. Don't get in the way, don't get in trouble. But so many years ago, when I was very young, had all of my hair and a few pounds lighter, I heard of Rosa Parks. I heard the words of Martin Luther King Jr. on the old radio. And I was deeply inspired to find a way to get in the way. And I got in the way. I got in trouble. It was good trouble. It was necessary trouble. One man I saw, I didn't know was going to be here, George Barrett, distinguished lawyer from Nashville. You know, when I went to school in Nashville, at the age of 17, I got involved in the sit-ins with Diane Nash, and I saw Diane Nash just yesterday at Boston University. It's someone that told me then, back in 1960, back in the fall of 1959, that we would be studying the philosophy and the discipline of nonviolence. In the early part of 1960, George, that we would be getting arrested and going to jail. He would have said, you're crazy, you're out of your mind, you don't know what you're talking about. And we would call troublemakers, we would call outside agitators. But we were troublemakers and agitators for what was right and fair and just. And there's a role for lawyers to play, for lawyers to never give up, never give in, never give out, to keep the faith, to continue to speak up and speak out, for lawyers to find a way to get in the way. We have to continue to push and pull and not be afraid. It's amazing to me that during the past few years, we've come so far, made so much progress, but we still have such a distance to go. Too many people have been left out and left behind, not receiving justice because of their class, the color of their skin, or whether they are from another part of the world or whether they speak a different language. We must be a society that is fair and just and never, ever fail to recognize the dignity of every human being. I think it's the calling, it is the mission, it is the role of the law and lawyers. A few short years ago, I wanted to attend a little school called Troy State College, now known as Troy University. I submitted my application, my high school transcript, in 1957 when I was 17 years old. I never heard a word from the school. So I wrote a letter to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and told him I needed his help. Dr. King wrote me back and sent me a round-trip Greyhound bus ticket and invited me to come to Montgomery to meet him. In the meantime, I'd been accepted at a little school in Nashville, Tennessee. So after being in Nashville for about 2 weeks, I told one of my teachers that I'd been in contact with Dr. King, and Dr. King heard from one of his classmates and schoolmates in Nashville that I was there. He suggested that when I was home for spring break to come and see him. So in March of 1958, I boarded a Greyhound bus from Troy and traveled 50 miles to Montgomery. In John Doe, I met a lawyer for the first time, Fred Gray, who met me at the Greyhound bus station and drove me to the First Baptist Church, pastored by the Reverend Ralph Abernathy, and ushered me in to the office of the church to the pastor's study. And I saw Ralph Abernathy and Martin Luther King Jr. standing behind a desk. And as I walked through the door, Dr. King said, "Are you the boy from Troy? Are you John Lewis?" I was so scared I didn't know what to say. And I spoke up and said, "Dr. King, I'm John Robert Lewis." And he started calling me the boy from Troy. My folks, my mother and father, were so afraid they didn't want to have anything to do with me, anything to do with the possibility of filing a suit against Troy State or the State Board of Education or the state of Alabama. And I continued to study in Nashville. But it was there, studying the philosophy of nonviolence, meeting Thurgood Marshall when he came there to speak, or meeting great young and not so young lawyers there, George like Z. Alexander Luby and others who defended us when we got arrested. You know, I got arrested a few times and went to jail a few times during the 60s. Had the utmost respect for lawyers. Went to jail 40 times. I'm grateful to John Doe and George Barrett and so many others, members of the bar and members of the bench. If it hadn't been for the law, I don't know what would have happened in the American South. I don't know what would have happened to our country. So don't give up. Don't give in. Keep the faith. Keep your eyes on the prize. Keep pushing and keep pulling. And do what you can to make justice accessible to all. That is your calling. That is your mission. That is your mandate. That is your moral obligation. Thank you very much.